Hey guys, Mr. E here, and today it's time to talk about the ranged arsenal that the Arbites has available to him. It's 11 weapons with a bunch more marks that we really aren't going to talk about all of them today. And what we're going to do in this video is we're going to break down, firstly, all of the relevant nodes in the talent tree that can interact with these weapons in a significant way. And then we're going to come back and look at each weapon and talk about its merits and lack thereof, and then sort of evaluate them and tell you which best blessings and best perks are. I'll try to timestamp each weapon down in the description, and this first part here will just be about the talents. So with that being said, before I go any further, let me thank everyone who has interacted, who has joined the channel as a member, or just even subscribed, who's liked videos, all that stuff. You have been driving me crazy in the algorithm the past couple days. We're going to crack 17K. We have blown through 16K. Arbites is treating the channel very, very well, and I'm very excited to bring you lots of content about him and all the other classes and whatever else is to come for Darktide. Remember, I don't just make build guides, I make tons of analysis and critique of the game too. So if you're in for that, subscribe, and I'll love to see you down in the comments. All right, let's go on and look at the talents. So there are a couple of talents that I want to talk about really quickly that have some funny interactions with this game, or with the way that this class works. The first one is remote detonation. Remote detonation counts as ranged damage. That will be important in just a second when we come back to it, but notice that like the range damage boost, this is actually boosting the damage that remote detonation does. We also have nodes up here like Withering Fire that can give us range damage after reloading. We can gain toughness back on close kill. This applies to our range kills as well. So those are the sorts of talents that we're talking about that have a little bit of an impact on how I'll be rating certain ones of these weapons. And if you want a tier list for these weapons, don't worry, I got it coming. I just got to play with them a little bit more to get the feel right. Ammo belt is down here for 25% ammo capacity. We've also got a reload speed modifier down here. Coming all the way down, the main focus of our ranged damage is going to be over here in Castigator stance with Blessed Armament. So weapons that can use Blessed Armament effectively get extra points in this class if they use it really well. So this replenishes 10% of your ammo from your reserve into your clip, rounded up with a 1.5 second cooldown. So the heavier you hit and the slower you shoot, generally the better, because you can just shoot, well, forever for 10 seconds while that's going on. We need to go down here and talk about some nodes in this bottom left keystone, namely these two right here, Zealous Dedication and Soul Guilt Scan. These are massive, massive scaling nodes for a lot of range damage, because critical strikes on many range weapons are huge, especially things like the revolver. And this gives us an additional 16% crit. This class has a base 7.5% crit, so we're looking at 23.5% crit right off the top there. Then we get extra damage for hitting weak spots. Down here with Efficient Killer, we can get an additional 10% crit and 25% crit damage on marked kill, which is like all the time. And this means that we're just going to have like crazy, crazy headshot crit damage. And the finishing off in terms of like execution stats with Keeping Protocol, which goes hand in hand with Monstrosity Hunter. Between these two, we have 50% damage into monstrosities, aka bosses. So that makes some of our boss killing potential really, really high on things like the Bolter, as you've already seen. Wrapping it up with the blue nodes here, we've got Judicious Efficiency, which gives us reload speed after we get Elite or Specialist kill. It's a nice chunk of reload speed. And March, which is going to give us movement speed every time we get a ranged hit. And I think that's just about everything. Oh, we have Final Warning here, which I haven't found too much use for yet. But if you get a melee staggering hit, you can swap and get extra range damage for 5 seconds. But I haven't had a build where I use that one yet. But the last thing I want to talk about down here is this keystone called Terminus Warrant. I haven't made a build with this yet, or I haven't shared a build with this yet, but this is a very, very interesting keystone that can give you some sizable buffs to your range damage. Specifically, when you stack up your melee hits, you can get a variety of buffs here. Firstly, when you have any stacks at all of the range justice, aka you've been hitting things in melee, you can swap to your ranged weapon, and your ranged weapons will deal 15% extra damage, have 50% extra cleave, and 50% suppression while you still have charges. So this makes weapons that normally have pretty solid damage but don't have enough cleave do a lot better. So this is things like shotguns that need to be able to penetrate through full hordes in order to just like shred them down. this doesn't have so much effect on things like the revolver or the bolter, which already have crazy penetration. But yeah, it's very, very good for those shotguns. And I can imagine it's probably pretty good for certain like auto guns and infantry auto guns as well. Then we've got Obstinate, which is going to increase your fire rate by 15% if you can get to 15 stacks or more. And then finally, if you really, really cap out your stacks on this node, you can get 25% crit damage and 25% weak spot damage, which could really take your precision critical damage to the moon on certain weapons. Okay, let's head back and start talking about the weapons one by one, starting with a very, very fun weapon, which is the bolt pistol. The bolt pistol has just so many weird interactions with this game, doesn't it? If you're familiar with Grenade Veteran, you understand that Grenade Veteran uses lethal proximity as a blessing, because lethal proximity counts any explosions on the class as part of its own blessing. So those shredder frag grenades that the veteran throws, or the smoke grenades that the veteran throws, all of those have their explosion radius increased by 25%, whether or not you're wielding the weapon. But the blessing we want to focus on today is the other blessing here, Puncture. Puncture means ranged hits add 4 stacks of bleeds to enemies. Okay, so think back like 2 minutes when I mentioned that there was a certain talent, a certain blitz in this tree that counts as range damage. That's right, it's the dog's detonate ability. So let's see what that means in terms of this. Okay, so I don't know if this is a bug or what it is, but it doesn't quite seem all that balanced to me, but it is a very, very cool interaction. And if you enjoyed that interaction, look for a build for it coming tomorrow. I'm going to start playing a few games with it because I think it is so cool that you can do that. It does some pretty sizable boss damage too, because you can immediately stack up 16 stacks of bleed, because this electrocution, each electrocution stack counts as a ranged attack, and so it just he's like got this aura of death around him when he detonates that is going to put bleeds and electrocute all these enemies. It's pretty crazy. It's very fun. On its own, though, the bolt pistol is a fairly solid weapon. It's got a pretty snappy time to aim, a decent ammo economy, and a good solid base damage. It doesn't particularly struggle against like any armor type, like even carapace enemies. That's not that bad, right? We do pretty okay against carapace. We do very well against all of our flak armored friends, and especially into hordes. You can use this weapon to kind of like make some space by shooting it at your feet even. There's plenty of things you can do with this weapon, and the cherry on top is the fact that that 25% increased explosion radius is going to increase your explosions, right? It's going to make your impact grenades have a bigger explosion radius, and I haven't tested it yet, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it'll make the radius of the shock mines 25% larger, which would be very, very cool. So let's go on to our next weapon. Oh, first of all, puncture and lethal proximity are your lessons there. Unyielding and flak here, because those are the types of enemies that are like gunners, and then unyielding is our bosses. This is a pretty decent bossing weapon, and it also does very solidly into things like Reapers, as you can see there. So we want that damage because we can make mincemeat of the soft targets with its explosion stats. Okay, going on to our second range weapon, the newly revamped combat shotgun. So this thing, if you're unaware, it got a buff to its ammo capacity, it got a buff to its damage, and it got moved into a higher mobility class. So this ends up being a weapon that has a lot of mobility. You can move very quickly while you're sprinting around with it, and it has a very slow stamina drain. Look at my stamina bar down there. You can sprint forever with this thing. So it's very much a run and gun sort of weapon where you can stay on the move and let enemies have it. What does it have that is special, though? It's got a couple of blessings that actually interact pretty well with the class. So we've got Flechette here and Manstopper. I want to first explain Manstopper. Manstopper says it increases cleave on critical hit. What this actually does is it makes your cleave very, very high. I don't know how high, but it makes it like nearly infinite. I'm pretty certain it makes your cleave 100, because you can stack up like a stupid amount of enemies. Actually, I don't know if this is about to work, but when you do get a crit, it'll actually go through all of them. Yeah, there it goes. So you can see that actually went through all of those enemies. That is what the increased cleave means for Manstopper. And as I mentioned before, this class has a very, very strong capacity to boost its critical chance through both Zealous Dedication and Efficient Killer. We're picking up an additional 16 or 26% crit right here, and we've got a 7.5% off the base of the class. So those two together really, like that's 33% crit. So we have a 33% chance to cleave through all enemies in front of us. And then we want to apply Fletchette, which is going to give us bleed stacks anytime we do get a crit, which I don't have the thing stacked up. But the ability to shoot through enemies and to apply those bleed stacks to them is one of the strengths of this weapon. I'm also using what used to be called the Cantrail mark of this weapon, meaning it's the flame variant. The flame variant is very cool because when you do get a crit, you can cleave through multiple enemies and it'll apply the fire stacks to all of them. So it's a very cool way to play. Do I really love the extra shells in these weapons? They're all right. I feel like they need to have a little bit more impact because they do consume ammo from the weapon, unlike what we are experiencing with the new Executioner shotgun, which gives those shells for free. But it is a very decent weapon. I like how mobile it is, and it's got a pretty good ammo capacity. My main complaints about this weapon would be it just doesn't sound good. It doesn't feel good as a shotgun. It's very dinky feeling. The best talents I think to use with it are still these crit talents down here to boost its crit chance. I don't think it really benefits a whole lot from Terminus Warrant, because Terminus Warrant gives you additional cleave when you are using this keystone, but we can already guarantee that we get infinite cleave by simply critting with Manstopper. There's a couple other blessings in there, but I think these are my favorite to spec into for this mark right now. Then we got to talk about the double-barreled shotgun, which has a similar thing going on, right? The double-barreled shotgun also loves to crit, and it can cleave through multiple targets with Manstopper. But since the double-barreled shotgun's base damage is so much higher, we are not really interested in getting bleeds with this thing. We're not all about like shooting multiple shots that are going to apply little dinky bleeds. We're about hitting enemies and killing them all with one big wallop of damage. So to that end, this weapon actually makes amazing use out of a couple. Oh, I forgot one note. This weapon makes amazing use out of a couple things in the tree. This weapon gets a ton of value out of priority endowment because 15% clip size doesn't really have a huge impact on many weapons, but 15% clip size rounded up on a double-barreled shotgun with 2 shells means you have a triple-barrel shotgun now, which is very fun. And we have Castigator Stance with Blessed Armament over here. If you can shoot and kill a weapon, every time you fire a shot with this, it rounds up. It replenishes 10%, rounded up with a 1.5 second cooldown. So you can shoot one free double-barreled shotgun single shell blast every second and a half without having to worry about reloading. And you'll also be moving around at full speed while you're doing it. So very, very potent with those combined. And in addition, we can stack that 30-something% crit, and then we can Manstopper through enemies. You get Scatter Shot, so this thing ends up just blasting into hordes and getting a huge percentage chance to crit, and then your next follow-up hit goes through every enemy in front of you and just absolutely eviscerates them. I know a lot of players were dismayed about the fact that the weapon didn't see any sizable damage buffs, but it's not supposed to be like a tank destroyer, even though it does pretty damn good against our Reaper friends here. It's really, really weak against armor, but it absolutely demolishes unarmored type and flak type enemies. So that's what I recommend typing it against, is flak armored and maniacs. Unyielding and unarmored typically fall down without too much extra effort. So I really liked it typed against the gunners and specials of the world. Okay. That's 3 down, going on to the Exterminator Shotgun. Okay, well this baby is an absolute beaut. There are 2 marks here I want to talk about and explain each of them. I have had a lot of fun and enjoyment out of these 2 blessings right here, but there's a lot of really good blessings on this shotgun. You can stack up a lot of crit chance with Scatter Shot, but I really like to run the Sniper Mark, the Mark 8 here. This Mark 8 has this long barrel and it just becomes a freaking sniper rifle. It also gives you a lot of precision so that full bore and punishing salvo can really hone in on like boss weak spots. So, or you know, Reaper weak spots for instance. So you can just continue firing at Reapers and you're doing 3k damage on a headshot. This thing also seems to have some sort of like magic to it, where if you even nick a sniper, there's a sniper right there, right? If you even nick a sniper with 1 pellet, it kills them. So yeah, this thing is an amazing counter-sniping weapon, counter-gunning weapon, anti-special weapon. You'll annihilate stuff from across the map. I love the tight spread on this thing. Speaking of spreads, let's swap back to the normal spread, which is this street sweeper sort of thing. This, you can't really see it, but it spreads in a wide cone like that. It can hit horizontally and it shoots flat. So it's a very potent weapon for shredding full hallways full of stuff, and it has a higher base damage, but it does have a good bit of fall off and inaccuracy over a certain range. However, that's not to say it isn't incredibly strong. As you can see, it does completely shred through those dudes. It puts some serious damage. Well, that was an unfair test, but it puts some serious damage into Reapers. This thing has such huge raw damage potential, and obviously, as you've noted here, it has 6 shells in the chamber instead of 4. This weapon, in both of its variants, is another great candidate for the use of Castigator Stance because of reloading those shells. Each one of them is so potent that it really gives you a lot of value out of those shells. And that's all, not even to mention the rest of its blessings. This thing honestly has a pretty solid set of blessings. Outside of a more specific target focus build with full bore and punishing salvo, which can snipe like crazy, you could also go into more of a street sweeper with you've got several different ones in there that are going to boost your close kill damage and just really stack up, especially when you're shooting into hordes. It boosts the damage numbers. I mean, this number is already crazy, 1060. It boosts it even higher, and you're just sweeping whole hallways with this mark. The real weakness of this weapon comes in its killing of armored targets. It doesn't do very well with mixed hordes. Things like bulwarks just completely shut it down, right? And then carapace enemies, well, that was a very weak enemy, but carapace enemies, even crushers, they're just taking too many shells, even with a crit there on the more armor penetrating variant. I don't think it's worthwhile to spec this weapon into dealing with crushers. It's okay for a weapon like this not to 100% dunk on every enemy in the game, right? So you can use it to deal with crushers, but I'd rather specialize it into killing flak and maniacs, which is like almost everything else in the game you really need to worry about. Okay, let's move on past this thing. Very excellent weapon, very solid weapon for this class. And talk about an old classic, the infantry auto gun. This weapon hasn't been touched in a while, and I think it is probably time for it to be eligible for a little bit of a revamp, since we're seeing many such weapons be revamped recently with our bout of like 7 different weapons that got touched up for this most recent patch. The notable things that are going to be coming into play in terms of the infantry auto gun here are basically our nodes down here for the crit chance. The infantry auto gun benefits hugely from critting. It has a special effect that it used to be even higher on. When you would get a crit with this weapon, it would actually do a string of bullets. When you got a crit, I believe it was either 4 or 5 bullets would be fired on a crit round instead of just firing a single round. So it sort of had this multiplicative factor on critting. So having a higher crit chance on this weapon fires multiple rounds, whereas it would normally fire 1. It's fairly accurate, and it does obscene headshot damage, so it's really solid at taking down targets with precision headshot fire. That being said, though, I think it is still kind of like because it's so weak against the armored targets of the world, like our friends over here and our friends right here. It's not exactly like super in the meta, and it doesn't have any cleave. You're still shooting targets one by one by one. Even if you were to take it into this bottom middle tree and go for Terminus Warrant with it and try to get that extra range cleave and suppression and range damage, it's going to eat your stacks of range focus so fast that you will be back to having to melee to get more stacks. Terminus Warrant usually does better with single shots than rapid fire like this. So while this weapon is very aggressive and looks impressive when you're like mowing down targets like this, it's just not ammo efficient in doing it, because I could be doing the same thing with 1 or 2 shotgun shells instead of like a half mag of auto gun. And this is Vrax's auto gun. This is the most effective, which used to be called the Columnus, by the way. This is the most effective variant of it. This used to be one of the most disgusting beastly weapons in the game. I would love to see it revamped and brought into sort of a more modern era. I think a lot of that will probably revolve around changing its blessings to give it some way to to compete on the front of like getting some penetration. As far as like, if you want to play with it now, Dum Dum and Fire Frenzy are probably two greatest choices here because they just stack absurd damage on this thing, and you'll end up really doing some solid damage. It's not bad against bosses or anything either, but I don't think there's really any reason to use this weapon over a lot of other options on the class. The Stub Revolver, though, is a very interesting weapon on this class. The Stub Revolver has always been a very solid choice. It has high damage, it has great precision. I personally prefer the aim down sights one. You know, a lot of people gush about the quick shot one, but I think nothing is better than the ability to like aim down sights and pick one specific target at a distance. It has that absolute laser precision. And we also have some really nice synergies within this weapon for stuff in the tree, right? We've got Surgical, probably the best blessing on this weapon, stacks up that crit chance every 0.3 seconds you hold it down. And remember, you only need to hold it down for like 1 full second before that plus everything you've got here are going to stack up and be enough to have 100% crit chance. We've also got Sustained Fire, which is going to give us 20% additional damage on second, third, and fourth shots in a salvo. That's just going to allow us to do increased damage when we're continually shooting the same target. Great for bossing and stuff like that. Honestly, not bad boss damage out of this thing either. And this is one of the best like special removal tools that we have. There's lots of other weapons that could do that, but not with nearly as much precision as this weapon. And because the Arbites is so aggressive in melee, you can be in here melee on an enemy and then pull out a revolver and snap down sights and nail a special or something that's approaching you and just get rid of the trapper at a moment's notice. There's a lot of value in that for this class. This class would also get a lot of value with Blessed Armament because you can shoot 1 free shot every 1.5 seconds. Why did I say it like that? And it's also going to get huge headshot bonuses and critical bonuses, as we established before. And it also really works well with Execution Order. I played a game with it earlier, and because Execution Order highlights all the priority targets you want in the map, it's highlighting gunners, it's highlighting specials. It's like you're playing Executioner Veteran, but better, which a lot of people have noted so far. You know where the enemies are, you snap right to them, and you put the cursor on them, you eliminate them. So it has always been one of my favorite weapons in the game, and I think that this class uses it pretty well. You can reserve this weapon as just like, you know, a special removal tool, and then do everything else with your melee weapon instead. Going on to the Shredder Auto Pistol. Oh, and I think these are probably the best blessings. You could stack more crit on there. You could go for rending or something if you really want to use it to snipe crushers, but I think it's better just to save the ammo, honestly, and just do with crushers yourself. Shredder Auto Pistol is an interesting little thing here. This thing got a recent buff, so you can do this. Run and gun with it, right? It does have a little bit more magazine, has a little bit more base damage than it did before. I remain unimpressed, right? This has the same sort of thing going on as our friend the Vrax Infantry Autogun does. In fact, it's got so much of the same thing going on, it leaves me with the question, why would I use this over the Vrax Autogun, which just has better stuff, I think. This weapon is just less accurate. You can't get as precision a fire. Like, I'm gonna miss some shots on this guy's head, especially as you get into longer ranges. The Vrax Autogun has that laser precision that is very useful with this sort of weapon. Even though this thing is nice and stable, I just find myself wondering, like, what is the use case on a weapon like this weapon over really anything else, because it's going to be very ammo hungry. It doesn't have the best cleave in the world, and when you're shooting into anything that has like you know, a good amount of HP, it's going to take a lot of bullets. It's going to be invincible to your bullets if it's certain types of enemies, right? Yeah, I just can't really find myself all that sold on it, and it does really piss poor boss damage. Yeah, like, that's pitiful. That's really bad boss damage for someone who's just drilling the head of this enemy repeatedly. So we could do way better for ammo efficiency wise. So I just don't understand bringing this over anything else, and it just certainly doesn't have the oomph, and doesn't play in the aesthetic of the class either. I don't see running around with this as your sidearm. I would much rather run around with a revolver as a sidearm in a pinch. Oh boy. Speaking of non-sidearm weapons, the fucking Spearhead Bolt Gun. Alright, this thing is going in the S tier, right? We know that already. This skin is fucking sick, first of all, I want to note that. But this weapon capitalizes on so much that this class has to offer. You've seen it in a couple of my builds already, but this weapon has tremendous single target damage and rending. It just penetrates straight into, crushers have no chance against it, especially if you start using it as a sniper rifle and stacking up rate of execution. This can stack crazy fast. It works incredibly well in tandem with the execution order because, again, this is a weapon that takes a long time to draw and a long time to aim down the sights and get lined up on targets. Knowing where the targets are ahead of time makes you like some sort of John Wick character where you're just sniping these targets before they even know where you're at. You can also use it to wallbang targets, explode bursters and stuff through doors because you have that information. Information is half the battle. Not to mention this weapon has a 1.6 to 1.7x multiplier on crits. A crit headshot is a 2x multiplier, and we have a huge crit increase. We have 33% on our own, and this weapon itself can stack another 25%. We're ending up nearly 60% crit. We've got a huge base damage, and then we got to talk about the additional crit ratios here and the headshot ratios here. This weapon is disgusting, and not only that, but Monstrosity Hunter and Keeping Protocol allow us to just absolutely level bosses with it. So this weapon has a ton of value and synergy, including with Blessed Armament. Blessed Armament, because it rounds 10% up and the clip is 15 on this thing, it's going to reload 2 shots every time you get a kill when you're in Castigator's stance. I don't think I have a Castigator's build set up just yet, but I'll get one set up in a second. But when you have it active and you burst fire and you go boom boom and you kill a target, it reloads 2 bullets. Kill a target, it reloads 2 bullets. Kill a target, reloads 2 bullets. So you can do that every 1.5 seconds for the duration of the buff, and that will allow you to stack up crazy damage, and then you'll start doing like 1 and 2 shot chunks on crushers, etc. So this weapon is one of the most dominant on the class. I'm very glad the class has access to it. It very much is thematic with how the class plays, and it's just super strong. I think the blessings that are the strongest are Cavalcade and Pinning Fire. You could swap probably Pinning Fire. I think Pinning Fire has lost a lot of strength over the years, and swap that with the Bleeds if you really wanted to, but these two together are just going to generally be your best. And Unyielding and Carapace are your typings here, because these are the enemies that don't die in 1 shot of this disgusting weapon. Okay, then we've got the Subductor Shot Pistol and Riot Shield. Big ups to Reginald, who made a video that has a good number of views. You probably saw it at this point if you're a Dark Tide viewer. But this weapon can be kind of useful. It's got this very funny little blessing right here called No Respite. And what this means is we can get up to 20% increased damage scaling with stagger. So the bigger the stagger, the more increase of damage on an enemy, the greater the increase in damage on this weapon. So what that means is a weapon like the Crusher that can apply lots and lots of stagger value to an enemy, like this, can then allow you to do some serious damage. I don't think I'm even doing that right. You have to have all my buffs up, right? As Reginald would say. But yeah, oh wait, no, I have to do this. Do I have the right? I have to get the boss. Yeah, I have to get the boss like actually staggered. Let's do it right. Hold on. Let's do it the Reginald style. Okay, we do 3 there, and we stagger. So I'm still not doing it right, but it's very finicky. That's kind of a meme use of it, honestly. I think this weapon is fine, right? I think it's fun. It's a very interesting weapon. It's a lot of fun to use all the way through auric and stuff like that. Once you get into Havoc and beyond, it falls off pretty damn hard. You're almost never going to pull this thing out. There's not really a use case specifically for it, right? Though, you know, as Reginald mentioned in his video, you could be dumpstering bosses with other weapons, Bolter, right, and doing it better and probably more ammo efficiently, but it's fun to do it with this weapon. You still have the shield, right? The shield still blocks enemy bullets, so you can use it in a pinch to advance and block some stuff. You know, it's got its own little quirks. I think what really draws it back is it's got this really long and lugubrious reload animation. Hey, you like that word, by the way? That's my fucking $10 word for the day. It's got this really long reload animation. It doesn't have that many shots in the chamber. It doesn't have long range, and it has a pretty low ammo capacity, right? I think if you wanted to go for something like this, you would just run the revolver, which has a similar ammo capacity, and you're guaranteed to erase whatever target you pointed at, because this thing has crazy, crazy crit ratios. I mean, case in point, you can do the exact same thing that Reginald was showcasing. Here, watch this, watch this. He was showcasing it with the shot pistol. You know, everyone wants to see the new weapon do something, but watch this. Right, like you can still do the same thing with the older weapons. They do just fine. I probably still did that wrong, but like this weapon is very good. Does a lot of damage, and I think it probably just kind of eclipses the shot pistol in my mind. I don't think that like anything like the shield or anything like that really sells me on it all that hard. As per usual, crit weapons get a huge curve, you know, boost in this game because of the way they penetrate armor, because of the way crits scale, and the quick draw stub revolver is a king of crits, and this thing doesn't really revel in that all that much. That being said, full bore and no respite are your ways of cheesing out some pretty good damage. They have good synergy with the class's stagger potential in general, and though it might seem like I'm dogging on this weapon too hard, it's fine. It's a lot of fun, as I said before. What's not fine and not fun is the vigilant autogun. This thing is probably my most hated weapon in the game. You know, this is like a fucking sniper rifle. Look at this thing. Look how long this rifle is, right? What caliber do you think that fires? Like, it's got 23, it's got 20 rounds in the magazine, right? These are big rounds. Look at those things. Look at those rounds in there. They're almost bolter-sized rounds, okay? And it does this sort of damage against a crusher. Holy wow, we have 3 bullets left in the magazine. That is pitiful. And not to mention, the stability on this thing is all over the place. Watch this. You see those random pulls to the sides? Good luck. What do you mean headhunter? How the fuck are you hunting when you can barely hold your aim steady? Again, I hate to do this, but if you are in the sniping business, you get yourself the revolver. Where are those bullets going? Even in fan the hammer mode, those bullets are going on the fucking target, and they are staying on the target. There is not this crazy ass aim drift. There's something fundamentally broken about these Headhunters autoguns, and they just need to be torn down and completely rebuilt. I just cannot in a good conscience tell you to bring these things. You are going to be wasting so much of your team's ammo, plinking away at stuff. They have no collateral. They have no like penetrative value. There's no reason to spend the ammo on these things over any other weapon in the arsenal. And they don't even have that good an ammo quantity. So just bring the bolter or bring the revolver if you want to snipe stuff. That's not what that's really not how this game is played, and this weapon does a piss poor job of it in any regard. I almost forgot about the braced autogun, which is a shame because this is one of my favorite weapons in Darktide. It's just such a simple thing, right? It's just the AK. It's just the fucking AK-47. And the thing just goes rat-a-tat-tat, and you get a bunch of damage from Death Spitter and Fire Frenzy when you're getting kills at close range, and it just feels good. It feels good to like run up next to a pack of like Ragers or something and mow them down, mow all these gunners down, reload your gun, and then just go to town, and you'll have like crazy damage against them because of Fire Frenzy and all that stuff, and just take them all out, right? That's the part of the gun that feels good. The part of the gun that feels bad is when you look at your ammo count and how much ammo it takes to do any one kill, right? Just the fact that it takes like a number of rounds to get rid of larger targets like that, when something like the revolver or the bolter or even the shotguns, the new shotguns could do it in like 1 or 2 rounds instead, really doesn't quite feel right. Adding on top of that, it doesn't have very good precision or like headshot ratios, so we can't make the best benefit out of the critical chance and the headshot damage that we get on this class. So while I do really want to play a cop that's armed up with an AK, I love to have an over-militarized police force. This is maybe an adventure for a later day when they buff this weapon up a little bit. I think it needs a little bit of love to bring it into the modern era, and I think that's just about all I have to say at this juncture about the ranged weapons available to the Arbites. He's got some serious contenders in here. He makes, honestly, fairly decent use of some weapons that have previously only been really dominant on things like the Zealot, like the Bolter, and the Revolver, but I can't wait to see what players come up with over the coming weeks and months as we figure out a little bit more about how to optimize this class and which weapons can exploit which talents the best. Let me know down in the comments, and if you have any thoughts on what might be the secret sleeper OP weapon. And I'm also going to put in the description just some disclaimers. I don't want you to come away from this feeling like I'm saying that you cannot use any weapon, at any level. The real consideration is when you're playing anything below auric, all these weapons are perfectly fine and viable. It's only when you start to encounter more of those large health targets like bosses and crushers and that mixed armor that you really need to start considering weapons that can effectively deal with those threats much more easily. And then once you advance to havoc, that's when you need to start considering heavily the ammo economy of the whole situation. You could bring something like the subductor shot pistol and riot shield, but the ammo economy is so small on that weapon that you're ultimately not going to be able to use it very much within the course of the mission, versus something like the bolt pistol, which has more ammo and has its own passive benefits that you could use to boost your damage within a mission. So that is my overall take. Let me know what you think in the comments down there, and look forward to a full range tier list of all the ranged weapons in the game now that we've had some updates and have these new weapons introduced in the weeks to come. And I appreciate you for watching. Mr. E out. Bye.